What is the creepiest glitch in the Matrix you have experienced? Part 3. 1. I have two different stories that involve my cat. The first one. When I was younger, I lived in this apartment complex with my family. A lot of weird things happened there, but really only to me, so I don't really know how real those were, or if I just imagined them. I know this is real though because it involves my brother and sister. I remember me and little sister were going to sleep in my brother's room. Let's call him Steve. I remember he had this small bedside lamp on the floor next to the door. So as me and my sister were getting ready for bed, we had the light on, and we both remember seeing my cat pass the lamp, and as soon as she did, the light bulb exploded. My other brother was just down the hall and heard the bulb explode. I remember him saying something along the lines of, "What did you do to Steve's lamp?" And after we told him that it was our cat that made it explode, he then told us that that was bullshit because my cat was right next to him when he heard it. TLDR, I saw my cat make a light bulb explode when she was actually down the hall. The second story is pretty similar, but this time I was alone. I was in my room at night with the lights off, and my room was pretty messy. I had this twin mattress propped up on one end by some boxes. I remember clearly seeing my cat go underneath the mattress, and when I lifted it up so I can pick her up, she was nowhere under the mattress or in the room. I have plenty of crazy stories involving that apartment, but those are more ghost stories and not glitches in the Matrix. 2. Not sure if anyone will believe me or not, but fuck it, here goes. When I was in high school, my friend Phil killed himself. I never really knew the specifics. All I know is that he shot himself at one of the local parks. Fast forward 6 years or so, and I'm asleep in bed next to my ex-wife. I'm having a fairly normal dream. I was at a store doing something or another. I can't really remember the specifics of the beginning of the dream. What I do remember is running into Phil in the store. When I saw him, everything got super weird. He actually looked like Phil, not like in most dreams where people will be certain people but not look like them. He actually looked like Phil. He looked at me and smiled and said, "Hey man." At the moment the dream got crystal clear. I asked him if it was really him and he said it was. He told me we were gonna hang out for a bit, and after that the dream got super lucid. He showed me how to make stuff, and generally we just fucked around doing dream things. Suddenly I realized that my dream was coming to an end. I turned to him and asked him if I was about to wake up. He said yes and said he had fun coming to hang out with me for a bit. I don't know why, but I asked, "So why'd you do it, man? Why'd you kill yourself?" The way he answered chilled me to my core. Not necessarily what he said, just how he said it. He replied, "My girlfriend cheated on me, man." He said it like it was a question he'd answered before. Like when someone asks you what your first job was, you've responded with the exact same sentence so many times that it just falls off of your tongue effortlessly. Except I had known his girlfriend, and they were the kind of couple that everyone admired. I said, Sophie cheated on you?" His eyes lit up like he realized he was talking to someone that actually knew him in life. He said, "Yeah man, Sophie cheated on me." We gave each other a hug and he wished me well. I woke up and felt super strange. It was somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning. I closed my eyes and thought, "Phil, if that was really you, I need you to give me a sign." No sooner than when that thought finished, my phone started ringing. It came across as an unknown number and only rang twice. I knew I wasn't dreaming anymore because my ex-wife woke up and sleepily asked me who was trying to call me so late. To this day, when I think about that story, I get chills. 3. Was playing Minecraft with friends over Skype on my desktop PC when I disconnected from Minecraft. I was still chatting with everyone on Skype when I checked my browser. That also wasn't functioning. So I got up and decided to check the router, announcing to everyone I was doing so. I checked it and it was fine. So still unable to connect, I asked the group, "What should I do?" And someone replied, "Check, it's actually plugged in." I stood up while saying, "Well, how am I still talking to you then?" Assuming it was so bug or partial disconnect. I at this point saw my Ethernet cable unplugged and about 2 centimeters away from the back of my machine. I announced this over Skype to everyone, and as soon as I did, the call dropped. This freaked me out for years until I saw a demo of someone scanning a VGA cable from across the room and managing to get an approximation of the picture. I guess I believe that VoIP part of the connection was able to make the jump across the cm or so gap or something. But I didn't move anything at any point, and my partner at the time witnessed it as well, luckily, or I'd have thought I was mad. Before anyone say it, I didn't have a Wi-Fi option and still don't. My motherboard 100% doesn't have Wi-Fi, and I definitely didn't have a card for it separately either. I had even theorized at the time it was some kind of surveillance installed covertly on my computer that routed my internet via a different medium, but either way it freaked me out. We'll never know for sure. 4. I was working at a coffee shop in my early 20s. We hired a new guy. When we met. 4. I was working at a coffee shop in my early 20s. We hired a new guy. When we met, we both looked at each other and said, "I know you from somewhere." We knew personal details about each other. I knew his family's history and where he moved from. He knew where I grew up and talked about my brother and sister like he knew them. However, we never, in 2 years of working together, could figure out how we knew each other. We grew up in different countries. We went to the same community college for like a year, but we literally went through our entire schedule and never had a class together. We never figured it out, and to this day I don't understand how I knew this information about him and why he knew so much about me. 5. I was 13, living on a USAF base at Misawa, Japan. This was 1978, the world was a lot smaller then. I'm in the base exchange, BX, basically a department store for the military. I hear my full name paged. I have a common first name, but my last name, not so much. The page requests that I go to the customer service desk for a phone call. I'm 13, I head straight to it. I get there, and after a moment, a woman behind the counter deigns to acknowledge my presence. I tell her I'm, full name, here to take the phone call. She looks confused, then points over to a young guy in a Navy uniform and says, but that's, full name. I'm nonplussed and wait until he finishes the call. Before he can walk away, I ask if his name is really, me. It is. I tell him it's mine too. We share a bemused moment during which we determine there is no relationship at all. I go back to my shopping, head to the checkout. On military bases, you have to show ID to prove you're eligible to shop. I show my dependent ID card to the older man, late 60s. He looks closely at it and then says, last name, huh? That's not a very common name. I agree, and then he says, do you know a Pearl, last name? Once again, I'm nonplussed and tell him that's my grandfather. Pearl being even way more uncommon as a man's name than my last name is. He then asks, how is Crook doing these days? Crook being a nickname of my grandpa's due to a poorly healed broken arm. All I can do is say that he's doing okay. Turns out that man went to high school together with my grandpa in a very, very small southern Illinois town. The whole thing, the sailor, grandpa's schoolmate, the unlikely remote location, just had me questioning reality for days. Now I know the matrix glitched, LOL. How small was the town? Some 20 plus years later, during a family reunion, my dad took me to his old school. The hallways were lined with alumni photos, up until about 1980 or so. Every single one of my dad's siblings were on the wall. 6. About 20 years ago I was making ramen on the stove. I had water heating up in a pot on the front left burner. I had pulled a packet of ramen out, opened one end and removed the seasoning packet, and was standing and waiting for the water to boil. When the water boiled, the noodle packet was gone. The seasoning packet was there, but no noodles. I checked the cabinets, the trash, everywhere. Vanished. Finally I had to pull out a new packet of noodles. I hadn't left the stove, and nobody had been around. A few days later I was cleaning up the kitchen and lifted the hood-style stovetop, and there were the noodles, sitting under the burner. Still in the packet, open on one end, seasoning packet gone. I couldn't have gotten them in there when I was cooking because the burner was on and there was a pot full of hot water sitting on it. I'm not even sure that it could have been lifted without removing the burners, which were all connected at the time I was making the noodles. Puzzles me to this day. 7. If we are going to include dreams, mine will take a good slice of the cake. I've always had vivid weird dreams, déjà vu, reoccurring dreams that seem to point to random future events in my life, but this one was different. When I was about 12 years old, I had a dream of being in a white room, completely empty besides two white couches facing each other, about 8 feet apart. I was sitting in one and there was a boy my age sitting in the other. We both looked confused, asking who the other was and why they were in our dream. We ended up hitting it off, having a generally short conversation and saying goodbye, never moving from our seats. Woke up, thought it was weird, but after a while I forgot about the whole thing. Then 4 years later I fall asleep one night to find myself in that same white room. I immediately recognized the room, the couches and the now 16-year-old boy that sat in front of me. Both of us looked at each other and then began to cry. I told him that I can't believe how much he's grown. He says the same to me. We catch up on random life events like old friends and about this crazy connection we have and how weird it is. We end up getting up out of the couches to embrace each other. It was such a heartfelt hug, and I told him I don't think we'll see each other again after this. He agreed, so we just hugged for a while, cried, wished each other luck and eventually sat back down on the couches to awaken the next day. I'm now 21 and I still remember these dreams vividly, although his face sadly fades from my memory. I think about it sometimes and wonder if I'll ever meet my dream mate in the real world. 8. I was around 15 years old and I had a dream about my grandfather. Nothing that out of the ordinary or too specific. In the dream, I walked downstairs into my kitchen to see him sat on a chair as if he was patiently waiting for me. When I got downstairs he was ecstatic to see me. He got up off the chair and said, "I have to go now." He gave me a massive hug and we said goodbye to each other. I wasn't particularly friendly to him in the dream, a bit blunt and rude, let's say. I woke up and went on my phone for a bit. It was 4:58 a.m. I remember the time exactly, it just stuck with me. When I woke up again for school I have never felt such guilt in my life, even after knowing it was just a dream. It was so bad that I almost picked up my phone to text him and apologize to him for being rude. However, when I got downstairs before going to school, I told both my parents about the dream about a granddad, and how terrible I felt for being rude to such a nice person. They told me to stop being so silly and that it was just a dream. Anyway, I went to school like any other day, but this dream was just in the back of my mind and just bothered me a bit throughout the day. Almost like a wave of negativity just wouldn't leave me that day. My dad picked me up from our school bus stop every day, and this day was the same. I got in the car and he sort of just sat there for a bit in silence. I didn't notice anything was up until he sort of just looked at me, and I looked back at him and he said, "Granddad died this morning." The dream didn't cross my mind as I had stopped thinking about it at this point. A few hours after I found out he died, it crossed my mind again. I reminded my parents of it, and they said to me they had already told everyone about what I told them that morning to help them. My dad later told me that he died between 4 or 5 a.m. that morning, almost exactly as I woke up from the dream. I was never a believer in this sort of shit before this, but from this experience there is no other way to explain it than he, for whatever reason, came to say goodbye to me. 9. Posted about this before a couple years ago. I had a routine where I would leave my house around 9 and pick up my BF from work around 10ish and stay at his apartment until 1 or 2 a.m. then drive home. I made that drive hundreds of times and still do. Straight line down a main road. Around 10 minutes before getting to my house there was a shopping center that I would look at because all the street lights were blue. It was very pretty. One night I was making the drive on autopilot while listening to music. After making the drive so often I didn't really have to think about anything. So again, my brain was on autopilot. I remember passing the shopping center and hit a red light and checked my phone. I forgot what time it was, but the light turned green and I continued going. After 10 minutes I should have been home, but I passed the shopping center again. Checked my radio to see what time it was, and it was exactly 10 minutes after I originally stopped at the red light that was there. I didn't turn around or anything. I didn't really have a reason to turn around since everything was closed and I wanted to get home so I could sleep. Not sure how it happened, just very weird. 10. 2 things. First, Jay, the ex of my mother, died. I was still close to him and at that point, had just started to visit him more often. He died unexpectedly at the age 49 of a heart attack. Drug abuse will do that, but he was sober for many years before he died. Weeks later, I saw a dark car at our grocery store I was just about to enter. Not near where Jay had lived and worked, but close enough so it would have been possible to see the real Jay there if he had still been alive. The car was the exact same model and color and even had a few feathers hanging down the rear mirror just like Jay had in his car. That seemed weird, but not unusual. But then a guy came out the store. Same height, same hair color and style, same clothing style, even tattoos on his arms where Jay had had them, looked exactly like Jay. So weird. I was trying not to stare and he was going to drive off. When he passed me, he smiled at me, that big friendly grin, sunglasses on, and waved his hand, in the exact same manner Jay used to, blasting Jay's favorite band, Rammstein. I still can't wrap my head around this. A car that looked like Jay's. I get it, there must be many more like that out there. But all the other coincidences. Second, I sometimes have weird thoughts. I'd walk through the city and suddenly it crosses my mind person X could be here. And then, a few minutes later, I see X in a store or walking by. Happened with a friend whom I had never met at that point. We met online but lived only 20 kilometers away from each other. I just thought, oh, A could be here today shopping. And it has a certain weird feeling to it. Also happened with a pretty random person, GF of my driving instructor, met her once, just had small talk. Went into a store and the thought of her crossed my mind, went into the store and there she was. I had no idea why I was thinking of her. I had nothing to do from her apart from meeting her through my driving instructor. Another time, and this one is really strange, I got the same weird feeling when visiting the big cats exhibit in a zoo. I saw the zookeeper feeding the lions. He looked ill and tired and really down. Then I thought, oh, he will die soon. I am a nurse, so yes, when somebody has an ill-looking skin color, I know things are already not great, but I don't jump to such weird things thinking about strangers. And I had the impression he'd die of something else, not illness. Maybe because he looked so tired, I thought mistakes could be easily made, which can be a life or death thing with big cats. Felt intrusive, I guess. I kid you not, 2 weeks later his death made headlines in a bigger local newspaper and even some TV stations reported it. He entered the tiger exhibit but had left a flap open which allowed one of the tigers to get back in and kill him with a single neck bite. Such a horrible death, but I knew it before it happened. 11. May 7th, 2020. I'll always remember the date. Got home from work and was in the bathroom getting ready for a shower when I heard something small and metallic sounding drop on the floor on the far side of my room behind me. I went to check but couldn't find anything out of place. It was weird, but I shrugged it off and went on with my evening routine. After my shower I was drying my hands and realized one of my rings was missing. I'd been wearing it constantly for almost 4 years at that point and couldn't think where I'd have lost it. I searched every place I could think of and started to assume I'd lost it at work when I remembered hearing the small object drop onto the floor of my room. I had another look around but still didn't find anything. I figured if it was in my room I'd find it eventually and got ready for bed. Sitting there getting ready to turn out the light, I finally saw my ring. It was under the arch of a pair of heels I had sitting out. I picked it up, my ring, put it back on, and have been wearing it ever since. I didn't know what to make of it, and it's still the oddest thing that's ever happened to me. From where I'd been standing in the bathroom, facing the mirror, the place the shoes were sitting was visible. I wonder what I'd have seen if I'd known to look behind me. 12. Not as astounding or dramatic as some of the others, but this is my personal experience. I was 4. In my preschool we had several different rooms that we were free to wander about in as we liked. I found a book in the library that had an interesting cover and lots of pictures surrounding the text. It seemed dramatic and dangerous, so I picked it. I found out recently that this book was the Childcraft edition of The Highwaymen, by Alfred Noyes. It corresponds almost exactly to what I remember. I took it to the sitting room to read because it was empty at the time. I could understand most of the story, the tone and even the cadence of the poem, but a lot of the words were too complicated for me to understand. The funny thing is that I was able to remember things that I couldn't have gleaned just by looking at the pictures, such as the general feeling of hopelessness and loss, and a pretty coherent understanding of the plot for someone who couldn't understand 1 out of every 4 words. Rereading it recently felt like whiplash because I remembered so much correctly. One of my teachers came in and told me that the book was not very appropriate for my age. Why the hell was it in a preschool then? And took it away. I never saw that book again until very recently when I found it online. I distinctly remember the teacher's appearance, as well as the rooms of the preschool and its location. A year after this happened, I went to a kindergarten on the other side of town and for the first time in my life, learned how to read. I distinctly remember moving from tiny exercise books for sounding out letters up to small chapter books. My parents can describe the process of seeing me slowly learning how to read. There is no possible way that I could have read and understood The Highwaymen as a very young reader, let alone before I even knew how to read. And yet the setting in which I read it claims the contrary. 13. The Case of the Vanishing Dope. Second year at uni. I had come into possession of a little dope, and I didn't want it. I'd tried dope a couple of times, and I didn't like its effects, the sickness, the racing heart and so on. So I resolved to give it to my friend, who I knew could use it safely. I remember what I did next. I was wearing a red checkered shirt with a breast pocket on the left. I put the dope in the breast pocket. It wasn't much, about the size of 4 or 5 peanuts twisted together in some cling film. I put a Ripple candy bar in there as well. I left my room, locked the door, walked down some stairs, and walked about 90 feet to my friend's dorm. At no point did I jump or turn cartwheels or anything out of the ordinary. In my friend's room I let him know I have some dope he can have. I removed the candy bar and fished for the dope, but it is gone. It's not in some strange fold of my pocket or something, and neither was there a hole in it. We didn't notice anything fall out when I removed the candy bar either. We checked the floor just to be sure, but there was nowhere it could have gone. And no, there was no way it was somehow latched onto the candy bar wrapper somehow. Perplexed, I retraced my footsteps carefully. The journey wasn't long, and there's nothing that looks like the little wrap of dope on the ground. I go all the way back to my own room and check the floor and the bed. It's not there. I had to go back to my friend and admit defeat, looking a bit silly. To this day I have absolutely no idea what could have happened to that wrap of dope. I wish I could see some magical CCTV footage of that scene so that I could learn once and for all what happened that day, because I am stumped. 14. My current GF. I moved to a new city. Call this city N. I lived in city V. Once I rode my bike to this city we'll call C. Saw this beautiful girl. Then one time shopping in a city we'll call S. I saw another beautiful girl. I have a very specific type of girl I'm attracted to. And all these sightings are years apart, and the cities are maybe 20, 40 miles from each other. So we're in the same area. Anyway, I moved to City N and meet my GF. It was so weird, we're giving each other the stink eye it seems sometimes. Until I ask her, have we ever met before because I seen you once in City C? She tells me she saw me shopping in City S. And so it was, not really glitch but yes very interesting. It felt like something was pulling us together. I have a very unique appearance as well. As my mom is Japanese and my dad is Mexican French, so every time we met we both felt we seen each other before. Why need in way? 15. So this one time, me, my brother and my mom were in a different country to go see other family members. After a few, we had to go to sleep. They didn't have a lot of space so we had to sleep in the same bed. Now it was really early to be sleeping, so we talked for a little bit. My brother was telling me something about how the nun, from the movie Conjuring, could appear in dark places, and then he pointed to a dark corner. Now that scared me enough so we began talking about other stuff. Suddenly, after what seems to be 5 minutes of talking to each other, I hear a voice from the corner. Like really loud. I remember it clearly what it said. It said something like, Optimus Gene. And it echoed for about a few seconds. Really deep voice too. Like The Rock. Oh, I was shooken up by that. I look over at my family members to see if they heard it, but guess they didn't because both my mom and brother were dead asleep. I stayed up for that whole night.
Thanks for watching. If you got this far, leave a comment, like if you liked it, and follow for more.